It seems the chink in the armour of the powerful pathology groups is widening. Just last week, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian and her Chief Medical Officer Kerry Chant conceded rapid testing would now be used to test Year 12 students and essential workers. The announcement, a concession, was a long time in coming, especially when the rhetoric of every Chief Health Officer in the country declared rapid testing is unreliable. It was that very same rhetoric used by the pathology groups to discredit rapid antigen testing since the COVID pandemic began 18 months ago. So why the change of heart? Berejiklian may have actually had her hand forced. Forced because of the out-of-control numbers of COVID cases running rampant through Western Sydney and the enormous stress placed on PCR testing capabilities. Simply put, the Delta variant's grip on Sydney showed how the gold standard was an unsuitable management and control tool to contain COVID. It's become abundantly clear PCR testing just wasn't cutting the mustard. Suddenly, the gold standard, for all that it was billed to be for 18 months, it was failing. So New South Wales had to adopt a new strategy that would work more effectively and more efficiently to contain and control COVID. Rapid antigen testing was that very tool to run in concert with PCR testing. Now, New South Wales has a two-pronged defence strategy that every other state in Australia should be deploying, but they aren't. And now, New South Wales is leading the way. The pathology lobby groups have dominated the narrative, but they have done it at the expense of Australians, Australian lives, and the Australian economy. And as the rest of Australia begins to realise the important role rapid antigen testing can and will play in managing COVID and getting states and Australia moving and open again, Victoria remains defiant. Dan Andrews and Brett Sutton have point-blank ruled out introducing rapid antigen testing in Victoria. Brett Sutton said on Tuesday that when Victoria is in a situation as it is, with little or no cases, it wants a test that tells its people are negative, when they're negative, all of the time, and as often as possible. He also said, when you're doing tens of thousands of tests per day, you don't want dozens of false positive cases that you then need to chase up as if they're real cases, put others in quarantine and declare them primary contacts when that is not a correct result. He also went on to say that the turnaround time for our PCR tests being over 99% return the following day means that we can use the test very effectively in all of the circumstances where we need to use it. But it seems Sutton and Andrews are missing the point, and they are failing to understand rapid antigen testing is about mitigating risk that is highly effective and highly reliable. PCR testing as a management tool simply doesn't mitigate risk. It increases risk because of its lag time in returning results during outbreaks. How is rapid antigen testing any different from a home pregnancy test? It doesn't remove the need for further testing, it actually emphasises it. It also indicates an immediate consideration of and a change in behaviour until you have that confirmation. What Sutton and Andrews and the pathology groups must explain is how does the gold standard mitigate against people not isolating after a PCR test until they get the results 24 hours later? And if they have COVID and aren't isolating, then they're at risk of spreading COVID throughout the community. How does the gold standard mitigate against that? There are many known cases of failure to self-isolate after receiving a PCR test. Just last year, there were reported cases of people undergoing a PCR test, and rather than going home to self-isolate, they went shopping at High Point in Melbourne. The PCR tests can't, and that's why rapid antigen testing becomes an important strategic management tool. Rapid antigen testing can do what PCR testing can't around providing results immediately, and it's nearly as accurate and reliable. Gladys Berejiklian must be applauded for her courage to realise PCR testing on its own will not save New South Wales businesses or lives. And it seems Sutton and Andrews are content to allow the pathology groups to make millions of dollars per day from it, and it will be their arrogance that will bring about further pain for Victorians. And as for the pathology groups, the Informer actually reached out to several for an interview around this subject. Numerous declined. Melbourne Pathology Group accepted and then thought against coming on after they understood they would be asked to discuss rapid testing. Later in an email sent to the Informer, Melbourne Pathology withdrew completely from the interview. The excuse? Dr. Lynette Waring, Melbourne Pathology's Director of Immunoserology and guru of PCR testing, said she was way too busy to come on for the interview. Maybe the ducking and weaving is an indication the pathology groups fear being exposed and caught out for running a misinformation campaign that seems to bear no actual truth